What comes to mind when you hear the word breakup? Okay, come back in. Okay, so does the image in your mind change at all if instead of breakup, I say bad breakup? Now talk about it. Whoa, okay, listen. So apparently a bad breakup is a little bit more animated than just regular old breakup. Well, did you know that Taylor Swift's song, We Are Never Getting Back Together, was her first single of many to top the Billboard 100. And since that moment, different people on the internet might debate the actual number that she's released, somewhere around 63 different songs about breakup. Now here's what I want you to do. Turn to your neighbor and tell them your favorite Taylor Swift song, Go. And if you don't know, just scream at them like a go. Don't pause. Here we go. Bring it back. Now listen, anytime that someone separates from someone that they're close with, there's gonna be challenges, right? Let's just put it simply, okay? Breakups are messy. To wrap up the series that we're in called Who We Are, I want to talk about a somewhat different kind of breakup. One that Jesus actually describes for us in John 15:19. And it says this, the world would love you as one of its own if you belong to it, but you are no longer part of the world. I chose you to come out of the world, so it hates you. In a lot of ways, Jesus is talking about a messy breakup. So let's start asking ourselves who exactly Jesus is talking to in this passage, right? He's with his disciples probably during the Last Supper, or at least sometime between the Last Supper and then his arrest before being crucified. And so to say at the very least, things were, let's just say, a little bit tense. And since Jesus knew that he had only a little bit and limited amount of time here left with his disciples, it would make sense that Jesus would use this time with his disciples incredibly purposefully. This is why he says, the world will love you as one of its own if you belong to it, but you are no longer a part of the world. So I want you to think about it this way. At one point, you and I, we were all a part of the world, which means we did things that were different from God's best for our lives. If you're a follower of Christ, and if you're a part of this church, you claim to be in him, that means that Jesus has come and helped change and give you a new perspective and a new outlook on life. In other words, like the disciples, right? You left it behind and you chose to go a different direction. I chose you to come out of the world, so it hates you. John 15:9. Jesus says the word hate. That's a strong word. Go ahead, pause, and ask this question here on screen. Okay, so I think that Jesus is saying that when we follow him, the world simply isn't going to maybe understand, right? Like when two people who maybe used to be on the same page suddenly disagree, that disagreement can cause conflict or anger or resentment or in some cases, yes, even hate. See, you no longer belong to the world. Jesus tells us that when we are no longer part of the world because Jesus chose us to, quote, come out of the world. He's saying that when we became followers of Christ, we were changed. In fact, Paul talks about it in 2 Corinthians 5:17, where he says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he or she is a new person. The old life is gone. The old way of living is gone, and now a new life has begun. So when we begin to follow Jesus, it's like starting a brand new life. Our outlook changes, our goals change, and our priorities change. Now listen, sometimes when someone's trying to be nice during a breakup, they may say something like, it's not you, it's me. Give me a like if you've ever heard that. But this time we actually mean it is us, right? The challenge for you and I as followers of Christ is not to use that as a reason to then turn around and judge other people. We need to remember that when we begin following Jesus, we become different. We don't become better. In Matthew 5, Jesus said, you have heard the law that says love your neighbor and hate your enemies, but I, Jesus, I say, love your enemies, and pray for those who persecute you. So instead of judging others who maybe don't follow Jesus' example or his life yet, you and I, we should strive to love them even more. Another thing I want you to see is I want you to be reminded that Jesus chose you first. It's in the second part of the John 15 passage, but Jesus says three very important words. He says, I chose you to come out of the world, and so now it hates you. The Apostle John explains it this way in another letter, in another book that he writes. He says, we love because he, talking about Jesus, first loved us. You see, one of the most difficult things about any relationship is that there's always a chance of rejection. But with Jesus, you don't need to fear rejection, because the thing is, Jesus has already chosen you. So we know that we no longer belong to this world and that Jesus chose us first. But what we do with this, how now can we respond with this piece of information? Check it out, talk about it. Questions up here on the screen. So if you're new to your faith and you still haven't fully gotten to this point where you're following Jesus with your whole heart, I want to encourage you with this. Just like Taylor, break up with the world. Listen, no breakup is really ever easy, but I can tell you that in my own life experience and what I've experienced as a follower of Jesus and the hope that I have in him, it is so much bigger and better than anything that the world has to offer. And if you think that you might be ready to break up with the world and trust in Jesus with your whole heart, let us know down in the comments, or hit up, better yet, the next steps link down below to tell us that you're ready to do that. Another thing that I might have for you, maybe you've already done that, but maybe for some of you, you need to renew your commitment to Jesus, right? In Romans 12, the Apostle Paul says this. He says, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way that you think, and then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is his good and pleasing and perfect will. So if you've already placed your faith and trust in Jesus with your whole heart, then I want to challenge you to stop looking back at what you're missing out on and instead keep looking forward. And remember, you're not in this alone. You and I and people in your group, we're all on different points on the same journey. In other words, we're all in this together. The third idea I have for you is I want to challenge you to continue to pray for those who don't trust Jesus yet. You see, every Christ follower, there was a point in our lives before we chose to follow Jesus. And as you think about your friends and your family who aren't yet Christ followers, I want you to focus on that word yet. We can and should be praying for our non-believing friends as often as possible. And just like you can't force anyone to love you, we can't force anyone to love God. But instead, just like we talked about last week in the video linked right here, we're called to be salt and light in the world, showing others God's goodness and his faithfulness in our lives so that they might one day recognize the same thing in their own life. How do we do that? Well, let's start by praying for them and praying that God would give us opportunities to be that salt and light in their lives. And when these opportunities pop up, we would have the obedience and the boldness to follow God's lead into that. Now, before we head out of our Connect groups today, I want to tell you just one more thing about what I appreciate about what the environment that we're trying to create here at CrossCreek. Because it means so much to me that this is a place where students can safely ask questions and explore answers no matter where they are on their faith journey. And I want you to help contribute to that setting. So there's going to be one final set and round of questions, and those are going to be up here on the screen. Pause the video and discuss it. Blessings on you as you continue to pursue Christ and break up with the world.